I see that we are now live on YouTube. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Vermont State Senate Committee on Institutions. Today is February 23rd, 2021. We are here to discuss Section 10, the clean water sections of the Capitol Bill. Present at the moment are myself, Joe Benning, the chair of the committee, Senator Dick Mazza from Grand Isle, Senator Russ Ingalls from Essex Orleans, and I am awaiting Senator Corey Parent from Franklin and Senator Dick McCormick from Windsor. But since we have a quorum, I'd like to begin. Diana Bothfeld, I have you as the first person up. And I'm going to repeat what I may have said to you earlier, because I know you've been with us before, but we have on YouTube the possibility of people showing up for this committee meeting that we don't have any idea whether they're out there or not. I will not presume there are hundreds of people out there, but there might be one or two who are totally unfamiliar with the committee process and don't know any of the players. So with respect to each of you that may be testifying as witnesses, please understand that you are playing to potential strangers that we cannot see on the screen, as well as 3 new members of the committee, although one of those 3 served on it a long time ago, and 1 brand spanking new legislator. So, Diane, I think we've done this once before where I've said if you would introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background before you begin your testimony, and then dive into how you are fitting into the Capitol Bill with this particular topic. How'd you like that for an introduction?
Thank you, Senator Benning. I think that was an excellent introduction. My name is Diane Bothfeld. I'm with the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets. I'm a director of administrative services, and that means that I have a lot of rights and duties, and I am an administrator. I am a manager of multiple divisions in the agency, as well as the budget, and those things that impact the whole agency: human resources, financial, fees, all those types of things. So that's my role. I oversee the Division of Water Quality at the agency, as well as the financial aspects around the Capitol Bill. So you've got me for 2 reasons today. The water quality work that the state has been doing is tremendous and has a great impact on our farmers in this state, as we all work together to improve the water quality of this state. The capital funds that the agency receives are granted out to farmers to implement capital aspects to improve water quality. They have to be long-term, as you know, and many are structures, but also a long-term agreement called the Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program to take land out of production that is critical. Its production is a challenge for water quality, and taking it out of production, but compensating the farmer is a part of the use of these capital funds as well that the agency receives. The best management practices are, in most cases, actual. Whoops.
Senator, I'm sorry, Denise, Mr. Parent is waiting in the waiting room.
I got him in here. Okay. It's right here.
Here he is. Sorry, Diane.
Whoops.
Now you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Yes, you can hear me now. Okay, thank you. All right. So the best management practices, another aspect of the Capitol Bill, are bricks and mortar buildings, and maybe some of them are buildings, but most are barnyards and manure pits and those types of things. And the third area that we utilize these funds is the Capital Equipment Assistance Program, which there's a lot of new techniques that we're requesting our farmers do to help protect water quality, but those pieces of equipment are extremely expensive. So we have this program to assist farmers to purchase those pieces of equipment that can be extremely beneficial to water quality. I have with me today Laura DePietro, the director of the Water Quality Division, as well as Jeff Cook, Administrative Services Manager, who also takes care of a lot of these granting programs. So I've given you an overview. If the chair agrees, I would turn it over to Laura DePietro to give you much greater detail, and also Jeff Cook. In the past, we provided you with an aging document. We provide 3 years for farmers to implement these best management practices. So we have an aging of those funds that we have provided to your administrative assistant as well, that Jeff can or Laura can speak to. So if the chair agrees, I'd like to turn it over to Laura DePietro.
Diane, thanks for that. I don't know if the committee has any questions before we turn it over to Laura. I don't see any hands going. I had one question. The last time you were with us, we suggested that the next time you see Senator Starr, you offer him our condolences for having to work with him. By any chance, did you remember to do that?
You know, I haven't been in front of his committee since. Maybe the word got out and he won't invite me back.
Well, the suggestion is still out there.
Okay, thank you. I'll remember that.
Laura, welcome to Senate Institutions.
Thank you. Definitely a different format than we've done in the past, but hello. Diane did a great job doing an overview, and I'll just say, in statute, as a reminder, for all of these grants and the work that we do have set out priorities. So, for instance, we have to do this in certain basins, like Lake Champlain is often more of a priority that we have to focus on in higher ranking points, for instance, than the Connecticut River. And a lot of that is driven just by water quality goals in the state of Vermont and the federal requirements that we have that go along with those. At least 2 of our programs, the BMP, the Best Management Program, and the CREP program, those are both matched with federal funds very commonly. The CREP program always, and the BMP program, when larger projects come into play, they're almost always matched with federal funding. And that is one of our priorities, is to ensure that we maximize federal dollars in those programs. The Capital Equipment Assistance Program, that is pretty much a state solely funded program. And the VHCB water quality grants will sometimes provide further match to those, but that's only on a rare extreme basis where need or deficiencies in our ability to fund come into play. That particular program usually has more than twice, sometimes 3 times the applications than we have funding for. So it's pretty competitive. So I'll just entertain any questions and details that you have. Again, as Diane mentioned, you know, we get these funds, and within a 3-year period, they're usually out the door, expended, and on the ground into projects. But that is an evolution of planning and design that goes through to get to that space. And
Mr. Chairperson, the request this year, as we work through with the Clean Water Fund, is $3,436,109 for this fiscal year, and the Clean Water Board will work to put together the request for next year.
I'm assuming that you have already been through our counterpart committee in the House.
Sir, we have.
Okay. They made any changes to the governor's recommend thus far?
Not at this point to our request.
Okay. Committee, any questions? Okay. My next witness on my list is Jeff Cook. I don't know whether or not, since Diane, you had introduced both Laura and Eric, and I don't know if you wanted to proceed in that line of questioning, but I'm happy to take Eric out of turn. How's that?
All right. Is there anything, Jeff, you would like to add? You're on mute, Jeff, if that's the case. No, I don't think Jeff has anything to add. So, Mr. Chairperson, I cede the floor. Okay,
Eric, welcome. And again, you might want to talk about who you are and how you fit into this picture.
Sure. I don't know if maybe Peter wanted to go first. Is that permissible?
Always possible.
Senator, if that would be okay, and I will quickly hand it over to Eric because he's the brains behind the operation. For your viewing audience at home, I am Commissioner Peter Walk. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation. I have the very similar to Diane's role. My role is to make sure that the department can function and to do all of the things that you've asked us to do effectively. One of those things is to administer the work around clean water as part of the capital bill, and we do that in a couple of different ways that Eric can go through in greater detail, but it's an important part of our mission to achieve clean water around the state. And helps to allow us to leverage significant federal dollars to help Vermont municipalities access clean water resources. So with that, I will hand it over to Eric for some more detail, but thank you for the opportunity to present this and look forward to working with your committee and answering questions you have.
Thanks for coming by. Eric, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon. And I do have I have a PowerPoint that I don't know if maybe Denise can sort of set that up, and maybe she can manage it, and I'll just let her know when to scroll from one slide to the other. There's 6 slides. And then I also submitted a table that shows all the loan awards that have been made over the past 2 fiscal years, which is actually an excerpt from a legislative report that we had to file in January.
So Eric, while Denise is loading that up, if you could give us a bit of background on who you are and how you fit into the picture.
Okay, absolutely. So I'm Director of Engineering in the Water Investment Division, which is division within the Department of Environmental Conservation. I'm really here in this capacity to talk about the Clean Water SRF, which is a loan program and receives an annual state match, which generally is provided through the capital budget. And then the other program that's sort of a companion to the loan program are what we refer to as the municipal pollution control grants. Now I oversee the engineering functions that are part of this program, and thank you, and sort of the more administrative programmatic side to the program. Additionally, there's other sections that I oversee. You may hear from one of the other sections, dam safety, if you ask them to come and testify in section 9, which includes an appropriation for state-owned dams. And then lastly, a group that functions as a small consulting firm within the division that services the agency-owned facilities around the state, principally the state park system, which relies heavily on their engineering services for a whole range of infrastructure needs. So we can launch into the PowerPoint at this point.
Want to give Denise some instruction on which page you'd like to be on?
Yeah, what I'll just let you know when to scroll, and we'll very quickly go to the second slide. So again, this is the request that we're making that's part of the FY22 capital budget is for the match to the Clean Water SRF federal grant. We annually receive a federal grant through EPA. That money is then put into a loan fund, which is then put out to municipalities and now private entities for clean water projects.
Eric, can I just stop you for a second? Keeping in mind that we are live on YouTube and people are getting a kind of a clean water 101, can you just walk through how a municipality in this instance might be interested in getting some help for a problem that they may have, what they would have to do in order to start that process?
Sure. And so on an annual basis, we solicit applications from municipalities to access these loan funds. In fact, right now we're coming to the tail end of the solicitation period. All the apps are due in by the end of this week. Once we receive the applications from the municipalities, who, by the way, work with their consultants to assist them with filling out these applications, we would then rank all the projects, and they will appear on what we refer to as an adopted priority list. The process.
Let me stop you again. What would be the typical problem that you might see somebody making an application for?
Okay, so many of the projects that we deal with on the municipal side are fixing aging infrastructure, sewer lines that need to be replaced, treatment plants that need to be refurbished. keeping in mind that many of the treatment plants, particularly when they moved from primary to secondary treatment, were built back in the 70s and into the 80s. And so we're clearly into at least the second, if not third generation of refurbishments to many of the treatment plants around the state. Just to get a sense of scale here, there are about 100 municipally owned wastewater treatment facilities in Vermont. Also, a major part of the program has been funding of combined sewer overflows, separation projects. Rutland right now is going through a series of CSO projects where they're separating storm sewer from sanitary system with a separate discharge so that the flow, they don't overflow the sanitary system during heavy rain events. So it's just some of the examples. In 2018, there was a major expansion to the Clean Water SRF eligibilities, and the first time it allowed us to provide loans directly to private entities for clean water projects. And we expanded the definition essentially of what we could fund, not only who we can provide monies to, but what we can fund. And so the major change was the inclusion of natural resource type projects, which are really non-point source type projects, contrasting with sort of the traditional municipal wastewater and stormwater project. So on this second slide, the first circle you see with the 49 million, that's the total loan volume that we anticipate funding through the end of this fiscal year. And the next circle, 7 million, that's the amount of subsidy which has been provided through loan forgiveness. This is a program that the federal government allows us to implement through our annual Clean Water SRFs. And then the last figure, 56 million, is roughly what we anticipate for this coming list in FY20, state fiscal year 22.
What is the thought process when you enter into a list of any kind, trying to decide what your priorities are?
Right.
What are the priorities?
So we have a system, a ranking system. It's a point system that's based on a maximum of 100 points. And there's three main categories consisting of public health considerations, the environmental considerations, and affordability or lack thereof. The more points that a system gets, the higher they are in the priority system.
So an assistant applicant in a system application, is there a question and answer format presented to each entity that's applying and they respond accordingly?
Yes.
Does the department give them any assistance in answering those questions?
Yes. Shortly after all the apps are in, we have a team of engineers and administrative personnel who get together and collectively go through all the applications. And if they run into questions, they'll follow up with the municipality or the private entity that's submitted the application. There's also opportunity, this is a public process, so there's opportunity once we develop the draft list to receive public comment. And we really do encourage the municipalities, the private entities that submit to really look closely at their particular project to make sure that something hasn't been missed.
Okay.
But there's a fair amount of back and forth. Just an idea too of the time period. So the solicitation process started in mid-December. We allow a few months to get all the apps in. Sometime in early to mid-April, we'll put out a draft priority list and what's referred to as an intended use plan. It's actually a description of the use of all the funds, which goes into a lot more detail than just simply a listing of projects. That goes out for public comment. We have a hearing, and then there's a 2-week period after the hearing that we allow for additional comments, and then we move to adopt the priority list. We then use that document along with the intended use plan to submit our application to EPA to receive the next round of federal grant dollars. And just to add a little more to some of the complications here, the grant that we'll be applying for that will sync up with state fiscal year 22 is actually the federal fiscal 21 grant. So there's a little bit of overlap between the two fiscal years, but it always works out that the start of the fiscal year, the state fiscal year, is matched up with the previous fiscal year's federal grant.
Thus far, have any CARES dollars been available for this?
Not through the Clean Water SRF.
Okay.
Okay, so we can move to the next slide. These are just takeaways. Actually, this was taken right out of the report that was submitted to this committee, as well as the House Corrections Institutions Committees and the two Natural Resource Committees. Again, just to point out some of the activity of the fund. So in FY20, we put out 38 loans. There were 4 privates as part of that, and the total is a little over $20 million. And so far this year, we've awarded 21 loans, 13.7 million, all of the municipalities except for 1 private. And we do have about 35 million still pending. So we can move to the next slide. So this just reiterates what I just mentioned. The end of the period for soliciting apps that comes up this Thursday. We anticipate we're going to have 56 million available. Now, any of the projects that don't move forward on this year's priority list, they're welcome to reapply. And along with those projects will also come the funding for those projects. So that 56 million could be a higher number if some of those pending projects that make up that 35 million actually don't go forward in this fiscal year. And that's not an uncommon occurrence. And then the last figure you see at the bottom, the 1.563 million, that's the request for this year's federal grant match. And on the next slide, and we can move to that, you'll see what the basis for that 1.5 is. In the first column, those are the federal grants that we're receiving during this 2-year cycle, capital budget cycle. You see at the top is the 20 grant. The reason that's in there is we had a very small amount remaining to match. And this is a 20% match to the federal grant. The primary reason why you see that small residual amount because of bond costs that were taken out of the appropriation. So to avoid that in this cycle, at the bottom of the sheet, you'll see an assumed 0.5% bond cost. We built in anticipated bond cost. It's an estimate. We never know ahead of time just how much bond costs will be taken from the appropriation. So in this 2-year cycle, because these funds are subject to the Clean Water Board approval, you'll only see an FY22 request. If you look at this chart in column 1, you see the FY22 federal grant. That will be available during this 2-year cycle. So most likely we will ask for a similar amount for the FY23 capital request in the adjustment bill. And then just for the record, this matches up with I think it's line 118 in the governor's request. There's a table in the booklet. I don't know if the committee has seen gone through the booklet or not. But in there's a table that shows all the individual appropriations and the governor's request. And then lastly, the pollution control grants, we can go to that screen. If you move down, there we go. So this request also matches up with the spreadsheet. It's line 119, and the request is for 3.3 million. Now we know that the project at the top of the list, Brattleboro project, this is the final amount of roughly $5 million grant that we're requesting to retroactively complete their pollution control grant. This is for work at wastewater treatment plant back in the around 2012 timeframe. They, along with one other project, South Burlington, their airport parkway treatment plant, went to construction. They were eligible for pollution control grant at the time, but the money wasn't available. This was really part of the stimulus funding period. And so we provided 100% loan with the understanding that if at a later date grant funds were available, we would substitute grant dollars for loan dollars. And the way we're actually managing this is that as we receive appropriations to fulfill those grants, the money actually goes back into the Clean Water SRF, and it essentially reduces the principal on those loans that these two municipalities have taken out with the program. And then, of course, that money is then available to put out in loans to other municipalities. So we reserve about 300,000 for at the bottom for planning advances, and the difference, the 1.267, is what's available for the balance of the 22 list. Now we don't yet know what projects will be on the 22 list. We won't know that until we rank all of the projects based on the applications we receive and then put together the draft priority list.
Okay, I don't have everybody on my screen, so committee, if you have a question, feel free to shout out.
As chair,
Yes, Russ.
in 2020, Eric, you guys did 38 loans, 34 munis, and 4 private. What's an example of a private project? What would that look like?
Mm-hmm. I think the one private on there was actually it was a bridge loan. Actually, if we can go to the table, we can locate that project. So that's the second handout that I sent to Denise.
Might take a second to pull it up.
Okay. Yeah.
Or if you're going to get there, Eric, I can wait or whatever. It's up to you.
Oh, one thing I can note about the pollution control grants, only municipalities are eligible for those grants, unlike the Clean Water SRF, which is eligible for both municipal and private. The other thing worth noting is that the area of state law that governs these programs for municipal pollution control grants, it's Title 10, Chapter 55. And for the loan program, it's Title 24, Chapter 120. So this table is a listing of all the loans that were awarded in FY20. And these top 3 loans are sort of the new generation of loans that the SRF provided. In all 3 cases, these are short-term or mid-term loans. They're 5-year loans. And they're what we refer to as bridge loans. They're for land conservation. And the idea behind these loans is to enable these entities to collect the grant dollars, the donations they need to be able to purchase these properties. It buys them a little bit of time instead of having to go out and borrow commercially and pay much higher rates. They can save a considerable amount of money. And in one case, there's been full repayment of the loan. And let's see, if we go down the list, right here, Milton Mobile Home Park, this is an example of a private loan.
Yep.
This is the case where they're upgrading the infrastructure within the park, both water and sewer, and they're connecting to the Milton wastewater treatment plant. and they're upgrading their distribution system. I believe they're already tied to the Milton water distribution system, but they are in need of upgrade of their pipes.
What's the term of a loan like that?
So the maximum on the clean water side, 30 years. And with the caveat that the useful life of the project, the weighted average useful life of all the components of the project can't exceed the term of the loan. So that could be more limiting. So if we were funding a project at a useful life of say 25 years, the maximum that we could loan them would be a 25-year term.
Okay.
So we can go down the list sort of quickly just to get to the next table, which is the loans that have been awarded through so far through this year, this fiscal year. So if you can scroll, yep, there we go. Yep, keep going. Once you get to the bottom of this page, you'll just see the total amount.
Orleans, Troy, wow.
Yeah, so you can see there the figure, a little over 20 million in loans for fiscal year 20. So the next table, and we can go through this pretty quickly, and if there's a particular project you want to focus on, we can do that. So right at the top, you see the one private, and that's this Woody Adams Conservation Forest, another bridge loan. And WWTF stands for wastewater treatment facility. PS stands for pump station. You'll see most of these are what we consider our sort of traditional point discharge type projects. And if we keep going down to the bottom of this table, you can stop there. So the 13.667 is the amount that's been awarded so far. And then the next table, and we don't have to go through this, but it's a long list of pending projects. If they all went, it's something on, we can go down right to the bottom of this. I think this is about 35 million. Yeah, just go up one page. There we go. Yeah, so that total is 35 million worth of pending projects. And then the next table just summarizes the values up above, and you can see over the 2-year period, it's about $70 million in loan volume, assuming that all those pending projects go forward this fiscal year. And then at the bottom of that table, you see it's a little key that informs you as to what the abbreviations that are commonly used in the table, what they represent. And that's just a description of some of the project types.
Okay. Did you want to say anything more about this particular document?
No, and again, you actually have received this. There isn't a whole lot more to this. There's a little bit of narrative, but this is the bulk of the actual report that you should have received back in mid-January.
Okay. Now, speaking of narrative, I understand that you and Tasha Wallace had some suggested language, and Tasha's here. So I think before we get into that, Tasha, you want to introduce yourself for the benefit of the folks that may not know you.
Oh, I have to unmute myself. I'm so happy to be here with the committee today. I'm Tasha Wallace. I'm Executive Director of the Lamoille County Planning Commission. but I'm here in my capacity as the president of VAPTA, which is the Association of Regional Planning Commissions. And for the audience at home, as it were, in the absence of county government in Vermont, regional planning commissions assist communities with all sorts of planning, ranging from emergency management, transportation, resiliency, economic development, a whole gamut. And so, should I launch into the language now, or?
Sure, your pleasure.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. And Denise does have that language if she wants to put it up, but I'll briefly just give you an overview. The regional planning commissions, we're very committed to the development of housing, childcare, things in rural communities, and in so many rural communities we find they just don't have the water or wastewater capacity for that development. So we work closely with, especially with small towns and villages, to do that development. And we found a couple of things. This first section here references the Environmental Revolving Loan Fund, and we're only talking about the planning section and the engineering planning advance. This first section in red really talks about the fact that we have found over time that communities do a much better job of working with the engineer, developing appropriate systems if we work with them on the land use implications, on what their current user structure is, where they foresee future development, and things like that. And so usually for, this is usually for the smaller towns and villages, because I think it's important to remember that, Eric referenced that when they work on these projects, they have a team of people and consultants. And these very small towns and villages, as you well know, you represent some of them only have one individual part-time staff, or if they have an existing water system, they have an administrative staff and a water system operator. So in many of the small towns, we act as their staff already to help them try and achieve these development goals. And I think,
before you move on, I would like to ask a question about this particular page, but if you finish your thought, we can get to my question.
Oh, go ahead. No, my thought defers to your question.
So this is actually the first time that we are looking at language changes in this Zoom environment. So for people who are unused to looking at changes to statutory language, I will ask you the question. I know what the answer is, but the red language that is underlined would be a new proposal for language in a bill that already, in a statute that already exists. The statute that exists is section 4764, planning, at the top of the page. All the black letters are existing statute, and you want to make a change with the red language that's underlined, right?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that clarification.
I know that's basic 101, but I have no idea who's actually watching these videos. So I have an initial question. Right now, a municipality has the ability to get an advance of funds for engineering planning for public water supply systems. Please tell me the difference between that and land use.
Okay, sure. So I guess the simplest thing is the engineer works with the town on things like pipes, where they go, where you put the water treatment, that kind of stuff. What we're talking about with the land use is who's going to drink this new water. Where is the, if there's more water capacity, where might the new housing go? I think it's a fairly clear distinction, but it's important. And it's important that these small communities do this up front. It poises them to have more information, and I think utilize the engineering assistance more efficiently.
So as I'm reading the second red portion, you're asking that up to 25% of funds awarded to municipality as a planning advance can be utilized to evaluate land use implications. Why not engineering as well?
Well, right now, 100% of the funding is used for the engineering. What we're suggesting here is 25% of that be allocated, up to 25% of that be allocated to looking at the land use issues, which are also hugely important in ensuring that the engineering and the system is a success.
This is usually where Senator Mazza and I kick in and wonder how come we didn't get these jobs that get us that kind of money in advance.
Yeah, right.
Anyway,
I wish I had one of those jobs to get that right as well.
We love that, the amount of money that's made in that department, yeah.
Yeah.
okay.
And I want to thank you. And it's nice to see you, Senator Mazza.
Yeah, hi, good to
Yeah.
see you.
I digress, right? But I also want to reiterate that this underlined red language is not just language we're proposing, but that we have worked on with the Agency of Natural Resources, and they support it as well, because we're really both aimed at the same goal of serving these municipalities and getting systems into the ground.
Okay. Well, let's keep going.
Okay. So the upper one really talks about using up to 25% of the money for land use. And then the bottom really just references that the funds can be used to hire the regional planning commissions to work with the municipalities. We've been working closely with the little village of Jeffersonville, which is got a Northern Borders grant for a new water system. And they just don't have the staffing to work as closely with the engineer or have the time to dedicate to working with the engineer that they really need to keep the project kind of on track and to meet their goals. And so we really are there to facilitate and work with them and to assist them.
They may not have what you're trying to get them, but they've got one heck of a great place to get a hamburger in the summer. I don't know if you've ever been to that food truck, but great hamburgers.
Where's
That's
that?
right. Well, there's probably
Right on 15.
Oh, as you come into town there? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Burger Barn.
Burger Barn. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Great spot.
Well, Senator, thank you for that wonderful example, because in the Jeffersonville right now, they're constrained in development because of their water system. So you do see things like food trucks appear because of the lack of available water systems.
Uh-huh. Okay.
And I wonder if Eric, do you want to, I did work closely with Eric Blatt from A&R on this, and I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak to it as well.
Right. The money for this is actually, in the PowerPoint, the very last slide, it showed an allocation of $300,000. That money is what we're reserving for planning advances for this next cycle. This area of the law and this planning is essentially used for communities that are unsewered, and it's because they have no user base. And the way these funds are provided is that they are a loan, but there's not an obligation to pay these funds back until and unless project goes to construction. So it could be years, it could even be decades, and we do have examples of that, where the planning started 30 or more years ago, and it finally, in more recent times, went to construction. And at that point, we reclaimed these planning dollars. The concept behind it is a very low liability loan for a community to get started with planning for infrastructure that they don't currently have.
So the money that you had reserved was actually reserved for the engineering planning. And now you're adding in the land use planning. Is that going to jeopardize anything moving forward?
I don't think so. And the reason why I say that is that what we're finding, and in fact, right now we're in the midst of essentially running a pilot on the coordination piece that planners can provide to helping these small sort of village centers to pursue infrastructure. We're running one right now up in Burke and in Wolcott. Two communities up in Burke are working on a planning effort, and it's kind of a two-pronged approach. We're funding the engineering, but we're also funding planning, and we're doing that actually through a federal grant in combination with these planning advance dollars. The way I would foresee this, if this language was enacted, what it would mean is up to 25% of this 300,000 could be used, it's not absolute, could be used for the coordination that's provided through Regional Planning Commission on a project that's receiving planning dollars for engineering services.
Just out of curiosity, what's Burke doing?
They're looking at community wastewater system for two communities, right? For indirect, for soil-based systems.
Do you know which two communities?
East Burke and Burke. I don't know if it's West Burke or just Burke.
Well, there's East Burke, there's West Burke, and there's Burke Hollow.
No, I believe it's West Burke, and well, I know it's East Burke is one, and I believe the other one would be West Burke. But
well, East Burke has Kingdom Trails. That's where all the tourist activities taking place.
One of the few places I've yet to actually visit.
Oh, Eric, you're missing a great little town.
Oh, I understand that's the case. I will make my way up there at some point.
Good.
So just to finish the thought on this, the type of planning we're really talking about here with these funds, for the most part, is not exclusively limited to this, but by and large, this is the way these money's been used. That's for feasibility level planning. Once a community gets beyond just the feasibility stage and they're really looking at a tangible project, then they would access the Clean Water SRF for the rest of the planning needs for the project.
Okay.
Any
questions thus far?
Senator, if I may, I just want to put a fine point on both of what Tasha and Eric are talking about, which is the challenge that small communities face who are running into these major infrastructure needs is that they don't have the money or the oomph to get over some major hurdles, and having a small user base and trying to figure out how to make that work in the context of loaned dollars is a challenge. And so I think the sort of all hands on deck kind of approach of trying to get over the finish line is really a huge part of it, so that we can augment the limited capacity in small towns and make it work. So I think we're really proud of the efforts that have been made to address it, but it takes a town by town, region by region approach to make it happen. So thank you for your consideration.
Appreciate that. Tasha, to both you and Eric, I understand this language has been proposed to our counterparts on the other side of the building. They, of course, now have the capital bill. Is there any kind of pushback, or do you anticipate that this will sail through on their side?
I'd be happy to speak to that. I was in House institutions late in the session last year. It took us a while to get organized to make the proposal. And at the time, the committee was very interested in the proposal, but asked us to go and work with the Agency of Natural Resources and iron out any differences in the proposal and come and bring something that we were all happy with. So I anticipate that they will be comfortable and support this proposal.
Okay, we try to avoid any conflicts before they arise where we can, so that when it gets over to us, I won't say we rubber stamp it, but it decreases the possibility that I have to send Dick Mazza over to the other side and tell them what they're going to do.
Well, those conference committees are always one of the most entertaining parts of the process.
No, Vince is not here anymore.
All right. Anybody else want to say anything at all about this entire discussion this afternoon? Don't see anybody chomping at the bit. So witnesses, you are free to go. We thank you very much for being here this afternoon. Rebecca Wasserman, you are on the screen, I'm hoping.
So long.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye now.
Thank you so much.
Becky, are you out there somewhere in YouTube land? Well, I was hoping to get an update from what she's observing on the other side, but it looks like she's occupied someplace. Anybody want to talk about anything else? Senator McCormick.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about artificial intelligence?
Yeah. I think we really ought to have a cranky curmudgeon caucus. I like that that terminology.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been told by the pro tem judiciary has a way of talking about whatever we feel like when we're on YouTube, and we had a brief conversation last week and sort of got well, let's just say there was some pushback. So we're going to try to limit our YouTube conversations to things that actually make some sense for committee purposes. But
Well, was that just a mistake that we were sent that, or?
No, it wasn't sent to us. It was sent to judiciary, but I'm on judiciary, so we have to make sure we.
Oh,
Well, I received your email saying, why did we get this? That's what
Yeah, no, I have no
matter.
idea. You guys all got a copy of this message on artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
and I have no idea why it was sent to institutions. Denise?
well, it
apparently
was,
does.
it came through to me. And usually when something like that comes through to me, it's an unspoken suggestion to share it with the committee. And that's what I did. I don't know why.
I think the sponsor accidentally sent it to the wrong distribution list.
Oh, okay.
Ah,
Becky's here.
Becky's here.
That explains
Welcome,
it.
Becky. Hey, Beck, can you give us a brief update on what's happening elsewhere?
Sure, yes.
No, I don't mean in your backyard. I mean,
No, I have kids, so I did not go into another room. I was
understand.
just sort of listening. I wasn't expecting to testify. With you mean with the Capitol bill?
Yeah, where are things?
They're still hearing testimony this week. They haven't taken up a draft yet of the bill, so so I wouldn't expect that until after town meeting week. Sorry.
So other than this language we've just seen, do you know of any other pieces of language that we should be looking at?
There have been I mean, there were the authorities that were presented in the governor's. Sorry, I did not. I would have moved
It's
location.
okay. We all have that problem. Believe me, we all have that problem.
I think I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. Oh, there's some sunsets that need to be extended. Like the Capitol Complex Security Advisory Group is being repealed this year. There's the engineering cost sunset that needs to be addressed. So that is looking at whether that should be paid out of the capital bill or the general fund. So the two other ones that I sort of had in the back of my mind that I had to keep an eye on.
So the Capitol Complex Security Committee is being repealed. That's good. So I don't have to worry about MOUs in the future between the various parties.
It's been extended the last couple years, so it can be
Okay.
extended again.
Great. All right, committee, we are all set for the day. I somehow or other thought that all those witnesses were going to amount to over an hour, but it didn't turn out that way. Tomorrow, we're going to listen to a lot of regional development corporations talking about their work through the capital bill. And I think that's all that I have for today. So enjoy your evening off and think about how we can razz Russ tomorrow.